Hey guys, Alex here again. Today we're going to focus on how to actually use the Environment Manager, including how to create and manage environments, making sure all of your default settings are correct, and the basics of Docker containers, including how mounting and copying works. If you haven't noticed, I've got a different setup today. Specifically, I'm running my recording software on my MacBook alongside the Environment Manager so that I can attempt to talk about various features while also performing the demo at the same time. Hopefully it all works out. Anyways, let's get right into it. Once you have the Environment Manager all set up and running, you'll be presented with this main interface. If you don't yet have everything installed, check out my last video for a complete guide. So in this interface, you'll notice there's a top section here with some buttons for creating environments, settings for the manager itself, a link to documentation, and a link to my Ko-Fi if you'd like to help support me. Under the Create Environment button, you'll also see this Folders dropdown, as well as a plus button, which is the Add Folders button. We'll get into how all this works a little later. In the blank space below, this is the grid area where all of your existing environments will show up. Only the environments in the current selected folder will be shown. In this case, we're looking at all environments, which will show every active environment you've created, regardless if it's part of another folder or not. Okay, now that we've got the main layout figured out, let's create our first environment. First step is to click on the Create Environment button, which will bring up this dialog here. You'll notice that we have a few menu options to fill out, starting with the name of the environment. This can be any string of characters or letters. You can even use emojis if you want, as long as it's not blank. So I'll call it test. Next we have the ComfyUI release. This is the base image that your environment will be created from. If you don't know what that means, or if you don't know anything about Docker, essentially a base image is like a blueprint which tells your computer how to construct containers. Containers are like mini computers or little virtual environments that run only what's needed for a specific task, in this case running ComfyUI. They're built from the blueprint or base image and contain all the dependencies, libraries, settings required to run the application without interfering with anything else on your computer. For the purpose of this tool, you can think of containers as synonymous with environments. They're one and the same. Okay, so if you look at this drop-down of images, you'll see a list of different version numbers and what I call image flavors. Latest is the default and essentially just uses the first or most recent image in the list, in this case 0.3.9. The version number corresponds to a ComfyUI release number. So if we pull up the ComfyUI GitHub page here, you'll see a list of releases over here on the right. So in this case, the most recent release is version 0.3.9. So you can see, all the latest features that were added, all the bugs that were fixed, etc. All right, so the Devel image flavor is using a different base NVIDIA image, which has additional developer tools installed by default, such as compilers and Kuden software. These additional tools can help to resolve some installation errors that can pop up when installing certain ComfyUI custom nodes. If you're trying to get a particular set of custom nodes installed and it's not working, try using the Devel image and see if that resolves anything. The only downside is it's slightly larger to download. Alright, if you don't care too much about which image is used and just want to get up and running quickly, I recommend leaving this to latest. Next up, we have the custom Docker image parameter. This is where you can paste in a URL for a specific Docker image you want to download and use as an environment base. For example, I created a custom image with all of my Patreon workflows, along with the custom nodes and dependencies needed to run them, and uploaded it to Docker Hub. I'll post the URL to that in the description below, so you can just copy and paste it here and try out my various workflows. If you decide to test it out, just make sure to set your environment type to basic so that you don't override the included workflow files. And you'll also need to have the correct models downloaded locally based on which workflows you're planning to run. Okay, now we can see the path to ComfyUI. So you should change this to point to an existing ComfyUI installation that you've already downloaded and used before, which might include all of your existing workflows, models, inputs, outputs, etc. But if you don't already have ComfyUI installed in your machine, then this tool will prompt you to download and install it automatically at the path set in this field. By default, it's set to the same directory as the ComfyUI Environment Manager installation. Finally, we have the environment type. So the environment type is essentially a pre-configured mount configuration for the container. In order to understand what this means, we first need to understand what mounting and copying data in relation to Docker containers is. Bear with me here, it may seem confusing at first, but once you get the hang of mounting and copying data, it will make managing environments a breeze. So when you create a new container, by default, it's completely isolated from your machine. This means that any code inside the container can only read and write to files that are also inside of the container. It can't reach out and change anything on your host machine. This is good from a security perspective, but not ideal if we want to reuse models and files between environments. So to solve this, we can attach or mount directories on our host machine to directories inside of the container. This is like creating a little window or poking a hole in the side of the container, which lets us stream data in and out. Anytime the container reads or writes data to a mounted directory, those changes will show up in the reciprocal directory on our host. So for example, if I mount the models folder from my existing ComfyUI install on my machine, then all those models will be accessible to ComfyUI running inside the container. Likewise, if I choose to download more models inside of a running environment using the ComfyUI manager, if the models folder is mounted, then those model files will also be saved to the ComfyUI install on my host. Read and write. This works for your workflows and settings as well. Copying is like mounting, except instead of poking a hole in the container, we're simply copying data from a directory on our host to a directory inside of the container. Any changes the container makes to copied data will not affect the original data on our host machine. This can be useful if, for example, you want your environment to have a copy of all your existing workflows that you can tweak, but you don't want to risk your original workflows files being changed. Okay, I know that's a lot of info, but it's important if you want to make the most out of this tool and manage your environments like a pro. Now, if we take a look at this list of options, you can see that you have default, default plus, basic, isolated, and custom. Each of these has a description describing which folders are mounted or copied into the container from your existing Comfy install. Now let's take a look at the advanced options menu. Starting off, we have the runtime, which is currently either NVIDIA or none. If you have an NVIDIA card and are running on Linux or Windows, you should leave this to NVIDIA so that the container can make use of your GPU. In this case, I'm on a Mac, so I'm setting it to none so that it will allow me to run ComfyUI using the CPU instead. Under runtime, we have command, and this is just the commands that will be appended to the main ComfyUI startup script. So if you want to add additional parameters like low VRAM, or in my case, -- CPU, you can list those out here. Then we have port. This is just the network port that ComfyUI will run from that you can connect to. Finally, we have the mount config. This is related to the environment type above and lets you specify exactly which directories you are mounting or copying from. So as you can see, as I change the environment type, the mount config changes in response. The names here match the names of folders you'll find in your existing Comfy install. So in this case, by default, we're mounting user, which has workflows and settings, models, your model files, input, output directories. If you want to add additional directory to mount or copy from, you can simply hit the Add Directory button and write the name of the folder here. For example, if the folder you specify doesn't exist, then the tool will attempt to create it first and will then mount it when the environment is created and first activated. Okay, I'll go ahead and hit create, and you'll see that the environment was successfully created and is now visible as a card in the main interface. Now that we finally have an environment created, we can go ahead and activate it by clicking on the Activate button. You'll notice that the environment is running because the state string changed from created to running, and there's a little spinning fan icon. To see what's actually going on in the container while it's booting up, we can click on this little terminal icon here to check the container logs. This will output whatever ComfyUI is currently working on, and is especially useful to see if there are any errors, for example when installing custom nodes. Once you can see that ComfyUI is successfully up and running, we can click on this provided link here, which will open up ComfyUI in the browser so you can start using it. When you're done playing with ComfyUI or just want to kill and restart it, you can simply hit deactivate here, which will shut down the container. Okay, so we can create environments and activate them, but what if we just want to make a copy of an existing environment? You can do that by just clicking on this duplicate button here, which will pop open this duplicate environment dialog. Just like when creating a new environment, we can give this duplicate a name, we can override which ComfyUI directory this environment will map to, and you can change the environment type. By default, it's set to auto, which will automatically set the mount configuration to match that of the original environment, minus any copied directories, because the copied data should already exist inside of the container after we duplicate it. You can always change the mount config manually in the advanced options like before. Once everything here looks good, you can click Create to create the duplicate environment. It's important to note that environments can only be duplicated after they have been activated at least once. If you duplicate an environment in the created state, the operation will fail. Now that we can create, activate, and duplicate environments, you may eventually find that you have too many environments and your disk space is suffering. To resolve this, we can easily delete environments that we no longer need by clicking the delete button and hitting accept. This will not actually delete the environment from your machine, but will move it to the recently deleted folder, as you can see here. Once enough environments have been added to the recently deleted folder, the system will begin deleting the oldest environment whenever a new one is removed. The default limit is capped at 10 environments, but you can configure this in the manager settings. If you choose to manually delete an environment in the recently deleted folder, then it will be permanently deleted. Finally, let's talk about folders. You can organize your environments using folders by first creating a new folder and then moving environments to that folder. Click the Add Folder button to open up the dialog here, and then enter a name for the folder and hit confirm. Once the folder is created, you can open up the environment settings by clicking on this little cogwheel, and then change which folder the environment belongs to. When you're done selecting the folder, click Update to save the settings. Now, if we change which folder we're currently looking at, you'll see the environment is present in the new folder. If you create an environment inside of a specific folder, then the new environment will by default be saved to that folder. Same with duplicating environments. If you create a new folder in the All Environments or Recently Deleted folders, it will have the None folder set by default. You can edit the name or delete a folder by clicking on the Edit button next to its name. It's important to note that you can only delete folders if there are no environments currently in them. You can simply move environments in the folder to a different folder or delete them until the folder is empty, and then you can go ahead and delete it. The last thing I want to mention is that you can change some defaults in the settings menu, such as the default ComfyUI path, port, runtime, etc., which will populate the create environment dialog when you're creating new environments. This is just handy if you have some defaults that you always want enabled and don't want to have to keep typing each time you create an environment. You can also specify the max number of environments that can hang out in the recently deleted folder before getting deleted. Make sure to hit save when you're done. Okay, that's it for this video, guys. I know that was a lot of information, but hopefully you can refer back to parts of this video if you need help getting things running the way that you want them to. In the next video, I'll walk you through some common issues and how to solve them, how to edit files inside of a running container, and how to upload custom images to a container registry like Docker Hub so you can share them with others. If you found this video helpful, give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. As always, a huge thanks to my patrons for your support. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys in the next video.